Hey there! Welcome to the Distracted Librarians podcast. We're your friendly neighborhood bookworms with a penchant for all things pop culture.
Picture this as our digital campfire, where we dive into our latest obsessions, analyze our favorite distractions, and rediscover the joy of reading.
Whether you're a media enthusiast, a book lover, or just need a break from the daily grind, you've come to the right spot.
So kick back, relax, and get delightfully distracted with us.
On this episode of the Distracted Librarians, we're going to talk about fantasy and world building. I'm Nicole.
I'm Drew.
I'm Killian.
I'm Amanda.
All right, world building. I feel like we have to define this a little bit.
Yeah. So world building in general is creating a fictional world for like a fantasy or a science fiction genre that is believable in terms of its description and consistent in terms of its rules. Mm-hmm. And that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different stories, but that's the core of it.
Yeah, it can apply to other genres and even just things set entirely in our world with our rules. There's just a lot less building of the world to do because the real world does already exist.
Yes, thank goodness for that.
Yes, you don't have to try as hard to explain Chicago
Yeah.
as you have to do to explain the USS Enterprise.
Yes. And there are a lot of aspects to world building. We're talking about magic systems. We're talking about whether there are mythical beasts living in this world. I mean, we can kind of go
Religious systems, economies, governing systems, geography.
It's kind of crazy.
The rundown of social studies topics.
Yeah. I mean, and I didn't even really, like, you're talking about economic systems, and it's not something that I think I see that much in the fantasy that I read, but there was a great deal of that in Dune, where I was like, oh, we're getting into, like, financial systems, which was weird to me. I was like, I don't know if I care, but this is still pretty good because it's important to the story, right? So, yeah, it's these authors that are writing fantasy or science fiction, they're really creating something almost from scratch in a lot of cases.
And there are times where you can pull in bits of the real world, and then there are times where some things have been left the way of the real world, and it's like, oh, that stuck out oddly. So,
yeah, definitely.
How much world building is always a fine line.
Well, and I think a lot of reading in general comes down to your suspension of disbelief, reading fiction at least, and what you're willing to tolerate from a story. And that changes when you're in a fantasy or sci-fi range where you have to be accepting of a lot of things real quick to get in there. And so the suspension of disbelief then turns to, did they make their world make sense?
Yeah. So there's good fantasy and not so good fantasy.
And I mean, everyone's tolerance for does it make sense is going to vary as well. I am a person who I can tolerate a lot of nonsense in world building. I love good world building, don't get me wrong. But I can also, for the sake of like a story that's going on, tolerate some world building that's a little not great because the other things going on make up for it.
Yeah.
But not everyone can do that.
Right.
And not everyone defines a well-built world the same way.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
And then you get to someone like my father, who last night at the dinner table was talking about how he watched Sinners for the first time and almost turned it off halfway through when the vampires showed up.
No.
Because he just wasn't on board for that kind of story.
Oh my goodness.
Because he couldn't pivot his suspension of disbelief.
Wow.
He's like, oh, there are vampires here now. I'm checking out of this conversation.
Did he finish it though?
He did.
Did he like it?
There were vampires in it. So no.
Wow. Anti-vampire. Just straight up. Okay. That's a thing. That's a whole thing.
Like I said, different levels of tolerance for things.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. We are currently reading Lord of the Rings to my kids. And so this is the second time I've read the books all the way through. My husband has never read them all the way through, I believe. Honey, don't get mad at me if I'm wrong. And, you know, Tolkien is like the world builder.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, more information than you ever wanted to know about anything.
Complete with songs and riddles.
The songs.
Mythology.
Oh,
Yeah.
the songs.
Entire other books devoted to just the background mythology.
Yes.
The languages, everything. It is amazing and insane. I think that we could probably say he's the master. He's the one that most fantasy and science fiction writers kind of look to as like the holy grail of how to build a world.
Yeah.
I will never know.
He certainly left very little up to the reader's imagination.
Oh my gosh.
At that point, which I'm not saying is an inherent positive or negative, but it is certainly a thing that he did.
As someone reading the book aloud, I would say that we could have dealt with like a quarter or less of all of that. Because there are days when we read for 20 minutes and that 20 minutes has been 4 pages of flora and fauna of what God knows what place we have stumbled into from a hobbit's perspective or whatever, you know, and I'm just like, can we get to a little bit of dialogue? I don't know.
And see, sometimes I'm all for describe all the flora and fauna, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. The second we get to pages of dwarves coming into the hobbit hole, I'm out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The
That's
names,
boring.
when there's 15 of them and it's every single one of their names have been listed and their characteristics.
Tell me all about the world, fine, but you cannot convince me I need to know every single one of these dwarves. Yeah. And how they came into the hobbit hole.
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, I think that there has to be a bit of a balance in terms of like what is just assumed that the reader understands and what is just spoon fed, shoveled down your throat so that you get it in full, like full color.
I think you especially get that when it comes to magic systems because I love a good magic system and I love to understand every bit and bob of the magic system and how exactly it works in the world. But I have also realized with Siren Queen that if you just drop me into a world with magic and expect me to figure it out, I'm okay with that. I'm actually like that was fun. I really like that book, and it does not tell you anything of how it works. It goes, you are here, figure it out, which is what the character's doing too. So
Yeah. Well, we were talking about vampires earlier. Well, so in vampire lore, there are a lot of things that are common knowledge vampire lore, and then there are books that have written vampires to be very different. And you know, some of them can walk in the sunlight, and some of them
sparkle in the sunlight.
Yeah, some sparkle, and some are telepathic and can move things with their magic, and like these are all, you know, it's almost like when even if you feel like you know something, same with fairies, when we talk about fairies, it's like, okay, what are the rules of this particular series or this person's version of those things?
And so much of it depends on what version, because with fairies, it's like, okay, are we looking at Tinkerbell fairies or are we looking at
the Fae? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Please see our previous episode.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, and so I guess in another way, we're talking about like, you know, vampires aren't typically considered fantasy, but we do see this in a lot of different specific, you know, groups of mythical creatures, etc., that kind of thing.
It kind of falls into that weird overlap where you've got science fiction and fantasy butt up against each other, and so does paranormal.
Yeah.
And it's all kind of, how do you define one from the other and separate them? Depends on who you are.
Yeah.
Depends on what you're trying to sort.
I think you could go pretty broad, because if you're talking world building, I mean, that could be anything. I mean, when you were talking about Tolkien as being OG master world builder, I was thinking, well, I mean, really, it's the Greeks, right? Like, I mean,
sure.
you know, I mean, if you're going to
Yeah.
talk about a world and customs and traditions and lineages, I mean, mythology gives you a lot. So vampires, fae, I mean, whatever. Like it's all in the same mix.
It is. Yeah, definitely.
That is true. I like that. The Greeks as the original world builders.
It goes way back.
First, because they also had their own.
Oh, yeah.
That's true, yeah.
Like there's a lot of ancient systems that are out there with different gods and goddesses and all of their lore. And I love lore of any sort, like whether it's that mythology, whether it's the newest fantasy book that has its own lore, whether it's lore in a video game that doesn't actually impact the game itself, but it's just here's information about these characters that you don't need, but have it. I'm like, yes, I will take it all.
Definitely.
Yeah. One other type of world building I really like is dystopians.
Oh yeah, I like dystopian.
Where they'll take, a modern day time and fast forward it 50 years into a catastrophe of things that we could see the building blocks of in our time. And that world building has to be very on point too, because it has to be a believable journey for how those years passed and how we got from point A to point B to point Q.
Yeah.
One of the best examples of that, I think, is Changing All-Stars.
Yeah.
Which gives you, here are these several perspectives of the now of the book, and then here are the footnotes for how we got here.
I love that book.
It is so well done in terms of just, yeah, I see exactly how you went from point A to point B here.
Yeah, dystopian, I feel like an introduction to that was the, oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking. The Mockingjay,
Games.
the Hunger Games series
so
was
good.
like a really good introduction to dystopian fiction for a lot of people. But that genre has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And there is really, really good stuff out there that really kind of challenges your idea of like what people are capable of and what they're willing to do to survive.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
I would have to say, like, I really like graphic novels. So the Walking Dead series is really good. Of course, zombies, it's got to have like that horror aspect to it. I'm trying to think of the other one. The Road
So good.
is so good.
I sobbed. I was reading that on a plane.
Oh my gosh.
And I was, you're amongst public and you're sitting next to a stranger and I was just sobbing.
Yeah. Also there's a graphic novel of The Road that's really well done too.
There's also Station 11. I think you used that in our 1-star reviews episode.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like 1984.
Brave
You
New
know,
World and
Brave New
Fahrenheit
World,
451.
yep.
That kind of triad of high school canonical dystopian fiction.
Yeah.
That I think Handmaid's Tale has made its way into now. But when I was in high school, it hadn't yet.
Yeah.
Is it like in classes now?
Yeah.
Cool.
I've seen teachers on social media talking about how they have their kids read like one of them or they read like multiple of them, and then it was multiple of them because then she was like, and then tell me which one you think it's more likely to come out of where we are now.
Oh,
Jeez,
wow.
we can tell
And
you
like
which
it's a
one
whole
that is.
debate among the classes, and she said it was always really interesting to see which one people thought was most likely.
Oh my goodness.
And people often will think it's not Brave New World, and I think that's a little short-sighted.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Brave New World. That's a great book. Okay.
My intro to dystopian fiction right there.
Oh, okay.
My senior year of high
Wow.
school.
That's a mind opener right there.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, well, we have stories that are built upon like our existing world, and then we have stories that are built on a whole other thing that doesn't exist as far as we know it.
Or has been changed so much that like
It's unrecognizable.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, what are some that are built upon our existing world?
one that I always come to that loops back to the Greeks is Percy Jackson and the Olympians, because Camp Half-Blood exists in upstate New York,
Yeah.
and the entirety of each of the books is go to this well-known city and find the Greek overlay portion of it that's just the fantasy living within the community.
Well, and that
wow.
series just spawned its whole own genre
Yeah.
of mythology overlaid on the current world.
Which
There's
has gotten wildly popular
so
in these
many now.
services. Yeah. And I love it. I think it's great because you get to learn about different cultures, like Arusha and the End of Time, I believe. Is that the end of the...
That's one of the titles. I can't guarantee it's
I
the
believe
first.
that's the first one.
Okay,
But I
yeah.
tend to mush all of the titles together into titles that are not actually any of them.
But having like Hindu mythology, oh my gosh.
That's super cool.
Amazing stuff. But they... What is the author's name? Rick Riordan.
Rick Riordan, yeah.
He has basically put his name upon a bunch of different other things in this Rick Riordan Presents. And a lot of those books have that mythological sort of fiction vibe to it from different
Based on
cultures.
Cultural mythology and ghost stories. There's one that I read, and I couldn't tell you the title off the top of my head, but it's based off of La Llorona stories.
Oh, cool.
But he does it in the ethical way.
Yes.
Because there's a world where he operated much like James Patterson and co-authored all of them and made sure his name was big and bold on top of it.
Yeah.
And he, in actuality, is structured as an imprint where he is allowing authors who more closely identify with the other cultures, the other religions, to be the authors of their own stories and just put it under his imprint. And I really appreciate his approach to that.
Yeah, because it brings around the attention that those books deserve, but still giving credit to the person who, obviously knows more about it than...
Kids will see Riordan's name on it, but they see the author's name bigger. And so this author I love likes it, so let me give it a shot, and then they fall in love with it too.
Totally. Okay, so what are some that are unrecognizable as our world?
Middle Earth is a huge example.
Huge example. Yeah. I mean...
Westeros from the Game of Thrones books.
Yes, definitely. And I would even... So I did mention Dune earlier. There's a lot of people that believe that the Dune books may have been an influence for Game of Thrones, in that the way that Frank Herbert wrote the books was just something that influenced that these sort of very famous world building, like Tatooine from Star Wars and all of that stuff. So I don't know. I think imagine what it would be like to be a writer of a series and then to have all of these sort of nods from other authors as time goes on. I think that's so cool.
Well, and something that a lot of the ones that we've talked about have in common is they are not only their book form now. They've expanded into they are a movie, or they are a TV series, or they're both.
Or a video game, or...
Yeah, and so, like, they get out there, and I think it's interesting how something that has that good world building in book form can inspire something that is now a more visual media. And I think it helps expand on it in some ways, and I think in some ways it can take away a little bit from it.
It kind of depends. Yeah. There's always that comment when you hear that something is being made into a movie or whatever, where you're like, how are they going to pull this off? Or things that have not been made into a movie for however long because it was just too hard to really pull it off in a way that would have given it the respect it deserved.
Yeah. But it has such a shot at, like, okay, you've described this whole beautiful world and all of this flora and fauna in Middle Earth. Now let's put it on a big screen, and we don't have to tell you all of that because you can see it for yourself. And hey, I actually watched the movies.
Yeah. Well, and so this goes back to that sort of balance where, Tolkien is the shoveler of information. And then other books like Dune, where it's all told through the characters. Like you're kind of dumped into this thing. We're talking about, like, that sort of, I have no idea where I am. I don't know what's going on. There's this mass thing happening. And you're really learning it through character conversations or their actions. So that makes it a lot easier. It could be a complete failure, but it could be really great because then you're not getting all of that extra like all the extra stuff that Tolkien is so well kind of known for. The rambling. Dune doesn't ramble. It's like, oh, you're seeing it from the eyes of an outsider in a world that he's seeing for the first time, and then learning about it through these sort of conversations he's having with other people.
It makes me want to read Dune. I've never read it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But as I said before, I tried to read it like 3 times and it didn't work. So it's still, you know, like on that verge where it could be really hard for somebody to figure out. There are appendices.
Oh.
So like that'll tell you something right there. There is stuff, you know, that you may have to reference in order to kind of get through it.
I think I prefer footnotes.
Yeah, where it's right there and you don't have to go like flipping to the back.
I really like footnotes.
Yeah, the visual mediums have their own, you know, pitfalls too, because they have to live up to what people have in their heads.
If they're based on the
Yeah.
things that are written, yeah.
You know, going back to Tolkien, you know, Lord of the Rings wouldn't have had the success it did if they didn't pull off their CGI work.
Right.
They wouldn't have had the success that they did if they didn't put a lot of focus into making the dwarves look as different from the elves as possible, and that they were their own races and not just like people in costumes.
Right.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
different ears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, there's a lot of work that they have to sort of justify in that visual medium that in book form they can just say they're different and let the reader's imagination fill in the blanks.
Well, and we will be seeing with a couple new Lord of the Ring offshoot sort of movies coming up, whether or not they will be successful.
Wait a minute. There's going to be new Lord of the Rings movies?
Yeah, there's like The Search for Gollum is going to be one, and that I believe goes into kind of more of his history
Okay.
and what he's all about. And then there's going to be another one. I think Stephen Colbert has something to do with it, which it dives into Radagast, the character from the book, who's sort of like this forest spirit, not wizard thing. It's very odd. There's a couple chapters about Radagast that doesn't really seem to make it, you know, like he's there, he's important, but also do we need to dedicate this much?
Right.
But we'll see what happens.
So I'm pretty quiet over here in my corner. I'm not a huge fantasy fan, and I haven't read a ton. I have read all of the Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and I will just be sad if they sort of mess up that world, though.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's
I mean, at least we know the technology is there to make
Right.
it great, but it won't be the same, you know, director
Right.
that did the other movies. I mean, and then there are people's strong opinions about the Hobbit movie, and
I didn't see that one.
yeah, well, some people would say don't bother.
I know, they've told me.
So I guess what does make a bad fantasy world?
Jar Jar Binks.
It's incredible.
Yes. Well,
There's a lot of the Star Wars fans out there that would agree with you.
Yep.
yes,
But again, the CG wasn't where it is now.
Yes.
right, absolutely. Yeah, and then rules that don't make sense.
The one that always sort of sticks with me is when the place doesn't make sense.
Okay.
There's a thing in writing in general when you're writing fiction called the white room syndrome, where if you don't get enough detail about the space that they're in, the reader will sort of forget they're in a space, and it'll just be two figures talking to each other if they don't like interact with the scenery, or you know, if furniture moves halfway through the thing, because there wasn't a good sense of place.
Wow.
And that doubles or triples down for me in fantasy books, where I have to understand the place that we're in. And if I don't, then it could still be a good story. It could still be like good characterization, and you know, there could still be like good things to find from it. But I don't know that I'd still call it a successful fantasy world.
You just can't see it. Yeah. Do you have any examples of a book that you read that was like that?
Ooh, I don't.
Yeah.
That would have been a very good thing to prepare.
That's one of those like DNFs for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I would have to just say there just isn't enough juicy
Yeah,
material
those aren't
here
the
for
ones
me.
that stick to my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can get through things like that, but I will not remember the world. Like, I can still appreciate the story. I can appreciate, like, the characters and what's going on and all of that, but the place just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's like the author just kind of forgot that, you know, they have it all in their head, but I don't until you tell it to me.
Yeah. Give
And
me a
that's-
peek and to see what's happening here.
Something about I can't read, you know, the minds of the people around me, let alone the author's mind through the pages of their book.
Yeah, definitely. All right. What else do we have? Another thing that might make a bad fantasy book is there is too many details.
Yeah. Just like you were saying with,
With Tolkien. Yeah.
Tolkien and with Dune
I don't mean to be, I'm not like poo-pooing
No, of course
those
not,
books
but-
at all. I'm enjoying them thoroughly.
Are your kids enjoying them?
They are.
Great.
But I'm astounded by how tolerant they have been. Because I do feel like there are times when I'm like, oh my God, I am still talking about this field. And I mean, maybe it's just me, but the kids, they don't say a word about it. But if you were to mention something, my oldest will just shout out a fact like, oh, and that is from when this happened. And I'm like, okay, she's been paying attention.
Wow.
So like, I know they're with it. Every once in a while, someone falls asleep before we're done, but that's okay. I think that's reasonable. That's the whole point of a bedtime book to me. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite fantasy series is the Wayward Children series, School for Wayward Children series.
Okay.
By Shannon McGuire, the one that starts Every Heart a Doorway.
I don't know that one.
It's a series of novellas, but the premise of the world is that these are all kids who went through the covered to Narnia or fell through the lake and ended up in another world and did their missions, their journeys there, whatever, and then came back to the real world without any time passing, but with all of them being so changed by their experience and not really being able to just slot back into the main world.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's a really cool premise, but it goes into so many different worlds, and it's sort of like meta world building.
Okay.
Where they'll ask each other questions about where they were from. Is it a world based in law or based in chaos? Is it a world that is cheery and colorful or dour?
Okay.
And sort of like define each other's worlds for them. It's a really, really cool concept.
Interesting. Yeah, that sounds cool. Nice. Well,
What are some other favorites?
yeah, I mean, I just recently read The Priory of the Orange Tree. Wow.
Very good, very dense.
Just, it is, I mean, I'm glad I listened to it on audio. I think that did make a difference for me. The narrator was amazing, did a wonderful job. But, that is like, you get a full world there. It is East and their customs and the way that they live and their viewpoints, particularly about dragons. And then the West and their whole thing and how they differ, and the North and South. And like, it is really, really beautifully done. And important because, as the story goes on, we need all of those groups of people to come together to kind of, make a difference in this world. I thought that was wonderful. I think that it was great. I don't know if I'm ready to dive into the second book because it's just as big as the first one, but I'm definitely going to get to it.
Yeah, I did not read it on audiobook, and my wrist still hurts 3 years
Holy,
later.
that book is like, it is a brick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I have been really into cozy fantasy world building lately. It started with Legends and Lattes, but then the Adenishire series by Jay Penner. Just because you get all of the world building through everyday life instead of major catastrophe after major catastrophe. And, sometimes just chill everyday life would be nice.
Yeah. No, I definitely like the cozy.
It all tells you so much about people and the world when it's, what did they do with their day on a perfectly normal day that doesn't have chaos affecting every second of their day.
And they usually have like I don't know, books and coffee and fuzzy animals and
Recipes,
stuff.
baking.
Yeah, baking, a little bit of romance thrown in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that.
I have not read a fantasy book in so long. I love The Hobbit. And then I grew up on the Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's like, to me, like, so magical and like fosters all these warm feelings for me, just because the idea of transporting to another world when you're a kid is the best.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's what books were for when we were kids. Right?
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah,
Still are. Still are a lot of the time.
definitely. Okay, well, I have an announcement to make. So our book club episode is coming up. So if you have not yet wanted to participate in that, the title is going to be Bat Eater and Other Names for Corazang by Kylie Lee Baker. So if you would like to join us for that conversation, you can read the book and listen to us talk about it at a later episode.
Yep, that one will come out September 1st.
Yay.
Yep.
Also, if you have anything to say about world building or fantasy, just send us an email or a message. We would love to hear about it. And until then, we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Distracted Librarians.
Many thanks to BCTV for their support in recording, editing, and releasing this podcast, and to the Friends of the Library for sponsoring closed captioning on every episode.
If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to reach out to us at distracted@btpl.org.
Until then, keep those pages turning and those screens lighting up. We'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions expressed in the Distracted Librarians podcast do not necessarily reflect those of Bloomfield Township Public Library, Bloomfield Community Television, the Birmingham Area Cable Board, or its producers or production staff.